Hello, everybody. This is Gregory with 5 Minute Catholic Apologetics, where 5 minutes of your time may get you to the divine. Today, we're going to talk about how non-Catholics know so little about the faith, yet they love to speak for the Catholic Church. Now, before we begin, let's start with a prayer. Nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. Amen. Gloria Patri et Filii et Spiritui Sancto. Sicut erat in principio et nunc et semper et saecula saeculorum. Fulton Sheen had a saying, and I'm misquoting it to a certain extent, but it's something to the point of you can maybe find 5 people in the United States who hate the Catholic Church for what it represents, but you can find 5 million that hate it for what they think it represents. And if you're not familiar with Fulton Sheen, he was probably the preeminent Catholic evangelist of the 20th century. He used to have a television show. I think it was on NBC in the 50s and 60s, and it had a lot of people watched. And he's on the road to canonization. But I think there's so much an element of truth. And I think there's a certain irony because a lot of non-Catholics think they know the Catholic faith, and yet none of them have picked up the catechism. They haven't picked up the catechism at all, but they think they know. So let's look at 2 groups. Let's look at the atheists and let's look at the Protestants. Now, within both of these groups, you are going to have fallen away Catholics. Now, I can address the fallen away Catholic part of this pretty quickly, and then we can look at actually people that were kind of raised in both of those things that aren't fallen away. Fallen away Catholics typically fall away because they were not properly catechized, and typically they leave very early on. And this is partly a problem of the faith formation in the Catholic Church today, in that, I mean, like at my church, I go to an ordinariate church. Confirmation is given when they're 7 years old, but the expectation is kids still go to Sunday school. But if you go to a typical Our Lady of Suburbia parish, as Father McTeague says, confirmation's around age 13, 14. But then that's it. And many times by that point, the kids have been so co-opted by the secular world that they're like grudgingly going. And then they go, and then they get the sacrament, which is important, don't get me wrong. But then that's it. That's the end of their Catholic faith formation. Most of those kids don't learn any more Catholic stuff anymore. They might still go to Mass. But we would never say that a 7th grade education is sufficient in general education. Just stop going to school at 13. We wouldn't say that. So you have improperly informed Catholics, and then a lot of them just get eaten up when they go to the universities, because the universities, of course, are run by Marxists, and then they're fed a bunch of lies, or they were never. And that's how they fall atheist or agnostic, or they're searching for something spiritual. They didn't get it in the Catholic faith because they were never really taught how to get it in the Catholic faith. And then they'll encounter an evangelical who will then make them feel the emotional stuff, and then also throw in some anti-Catholic stuff, and then the Bible's everything you need, and then so forth. And then those are the 2 roads for Catholics who go to those 2 kind of destinations. But in general, people who criticize the faith don't know the faith, yet they have the arrogance to think that they know the faith. And you look at Protestants, a lot of Protestants are raised in such steep anti-Catholic bigotry at a very young age. Oh, what's that church over there? Oh, it's a Catholic church. Don't go there. It's the whore of Babylon. Even subtle statements you can tell a 6-year-old, 7-year-old. Oh, don't go there. The nuns are going to kidnap you. Oh, don't go over there. They worship statues. They worship goddesses. It's these little things that you're getting at a very young age when your faith is developing. And then, of course, as they get older, they're going to get more and more of this subtle, sometimes not so subtle anti-Catholicism. And on one level, they do have invincible ignorance. Because there's the question of, well, if you turn your back on the church founded by Jesus Christ, woe is you. We have that episode on what Christ says to those who turn their back on him. But we know that you have to give consent to that. And I would say, like certainly like the Sherpa who lives in the Himalayas, who's never encountered Jesus Christ, obviously they have invincible ignorance. But I would say there's a good swath of Protestants who can probably claim invincible ignorance because they've been so raised in this anti-Catholic milieu of hatred toward the faith. And one thing we talked about in the episode why is it that Protestants hate Catholics, but Catholics really don't hate Protestants? It's one of the unifying factors of Protestantism is their hatred for Catholicism. And it's almost akin to like the Catholic Church is the popular clique in a high school. And all the other denominations, like you see at the beginning of Mean Girls, where Lizzie Kaplan explains to Lindsay Lohan the different groups. You have the Asians, you have the nerdy Asians, you have the dropouts, you have the stoners. So all these denominations are different groups, and they all hate the plastics, but deep down they all want to be the plastics. And it's almost like that to a certain extent. They would never admit that. But one of the unifying factors of Protestants, and they came up with that term in the 1520s. The Catholics didn't make that term up for them, is their unifying hatred. And so they can church jump. We have episodes on church jumping, like why Protestants church jump to different churches that have fundamentally different theology, and they seem to be okay with it because the theology doesn't matter to them. It's mostly just fellowship and how you feel. But none of them, when they say stuff like we worship statues, the Pope is the whore, the church is the whore, we do all these things that we shouldn't be doing. But none of them have read Catholic literature. They've read Jack Chick literature flick, the little the Jack Chick pamphlets, or whatever their anti-Catholic pastors have done. And if you encounter one, you tell them, actually, we don't do any of these things. It's not that they're going to be like, you know what, I'm going to go and read it. The Catholicism for Dummies. Father Trujillo, I think there's that one. It's like, I'm not going to read that. They go to some Catholic source about the Catholic faith, which is ridiculous. If you want to learn about the Catholic faith, what it really truly teaches, read the Catechism. And like I mentioned in the episode, the two retorts that all Catholics who are learning apologetics should learn, just two basic retorts. It's prove it and show me. So when they say that we worship statues, say just show me. Show me in Catholic literature. Well, I got my Bible. I don't have my catechism. It's like, show me in some Catholic, official Catholic with an imprimatur that says we worship Mary as a goddess. Show me. So you have this on the Protestant side, like they'll speak so vehemently, and you can see this from Protestant apologists too about the Catholic faith. They'll miscontextualize something in the Bible, or they'll miscontextualize some edict that some papal bull from the 16th century or from the Middle Ages, and they'll say that, see, that's what the Catholic Church teaches. It's like, that's not what the Catholic Church teaches. Why don't you actually go to Catholic source material to find out? So then you got on the other side of the spectrum, you have the atheists/agnostics. And I find agnostics to be even more sufferable than atheists. At least the atheists can take an opinion and they actually have a stance and say God does not exist. Agnostics are like, maybe he does, but I'd rather not watch Netflix. I really don't care. But it's the same thing when you encounter the atheists, whether it be like the somewhat amateur apologist like I am, or just an atheist in the street that you're talking to, or somebody that you might know from family or friends. It's the same thing. They think they know what Christianity teaches. They think they know the answers to all the things that are supportive of atheism. And my encounter with the atheists is most atheists are too smart for their own good, and they suffer from the sin of hubris. There's no question, there's no sensibility of obedience, humility at all. I'm only parroting what the Catholic Church teaches in 98% of my videos. Some of them are editorialized, but most of them are I'm just telling you what the Holy Mother Church teaches, and that we need to be obedient. But the atheists, it's the same thing here. Like none of them really have read any truly Catholic tracts. And if you tell them, and I mentioned this book, and there's other books like it, like the formative experience of Christendom on everything that's beneficial about Western civilizations, like they don't understand that there's this kind of cognitive dissonance about so many of the benefits that they have today, whether it be on the effect of law or medicine or art or the university system or human rights. All these things were formed by the Catholic Church, but they just don't know these things. Science, we think that the Catholic Church were obscurantists when it comes to science. I mean, if you look at 17th century science, almost all of the forerunners and vanguards of it were Jesuits. Not to mention astronomy. We eventually do have to do an episode on Galileo. But a lot of these things they just don't know, right? Because either they were Christian on one level and then they had some formative event, typically it's some bad relationship with their father, that made them go atheist. But they're going to read atheist stuff and they'll read what atheists say that Catholics or Christians say about stuff, but they're not actually ever reading Catholic stuff. So when you encounter an atheist, it's like they're woefully ignorant on Catholic doctrine, yet they will speak like they know everything about Catholic doctrine. And that's the kind of thing that you will encounter if you ever interact with both Protestants and with atheists, is that you will never find one that really knows the Catholic Church well. What it is they've surrounded themselves in this cocoon of, if they're Protestant, it's going to be Protestant and a Catholic belief. It's atheist, it's going to be the atheist stuff. And they kind of live in this echo chamber where they only hear that. And certainly you could see this happen with Catholics and the Catholic faith as well. But it's easier to So what's the best way to approach these people? Well, I think the best way to approach these people, as I mentioned on the episode, not to proselytize, is answer questions. Answer questions and then redirect. And so when they make accusations about the church did this, church did that, well, it's best to be educated on the faith. But if they make accusations that the Catholic Church did this or that, tell them, show me in Catholic doctrine, show me, prove it. The burden's on them because they're the ones making the assertion, the claim. It's not on you. It's not on you at all. And I would tell you also, don't proselytize with these people. Answer questions, defend the faith. Answer questions, defend the faith. And pray to the Holy Spirit, and that the Holy Spirit will work through them. But just understand, a large majority of people who hate the Catholic faith, like Fulton Sheen said, don't really hate what the Catholic Church is. It's what they think it is and how they've been raised to hate it. Guys, post in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Hit the notification, subscribe, and share button. Until next time, take care. God bless and pray.